How does it feel to be in the Mockingbird family? Like, how does it feel for you? Like, because for me, it feels great, like it's home.
I can definitely agree with that. Like, I can walk into the main office and there are people there that know me by name, even though I haven't been there in like a year or two. Like, people recognize me, and that is an incredible feeling. I definitely feel like I'm accepted.
That also like really showed me that it was more of a family like environment. It wasn't just something that people went to, and it wasn't all like super professional. Like, yeah, when we're presenting to legislators maybe, but when we're all together, like there's a place that we belong.
Definitely.
Because of the community that is within Mockingbird, I do feel like it is great to keep coming back. And not only is there that family there, we also are doing like such a great thing. Like, we're advocating for new policy changes for new generations. Like, it's crazy.
Absolutely.
And that brings up a great point about Youth Advocacy Day. I remember my very first Youth Advocacy Day.
Everyone remembers their first.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. We were in the Capitol building and like those huge steps. I had never seen a place like so big and like made out like entirely concrete and marble.
I know that. The Capitol building just being made out of marble was insane. There's pictures on the wall of the quarry that it came out of, and I'm like, places like that exist?
I remember we went up and we were going to the offices, and I saw everybody, like not a single person did not look like they were like at their best. Like, no, I never saw like a sweatpant in sight. And I was in some really like beat up tennis shoes and like this big giant winter coat because it was freezing and I didn't expect it to be.
It's February.
I thought that was the start of spring at that age. I didn't know. I went up there and I don't remember who I talked to. Obviously, this was years ago. And I remember them being so welcoming and so excited. They were like, oh my goodness, Mockingbird's here. And we sat at this big table, like it's like the one that you'd see at like the Oval Office on TV. And we put up our slideshow and we talked about our topic. I believe that was Ideas with Ease. As we were presenting, this legislator, he had the biggest smile. It was so fantastic, and he really heard what I had to say as a chapter member, and somebody that important even giving me the time of day was something that I'd never experienced before.
Legislators, they love when Mockingbird comes to visit. They love hearing stories from not only youth, but from their constituents. Sure, you can hear what could be going wrong in your district and what you can fix from like your aides or from other colleagues, but to hear it directly from the mouths of the youth, that is invaluable in someone in their position. Not only in helping them make a decision, but helping them enforce their decision. When they're up there talking about the bill, they can bring up, these youth told me all of these things, and I think this is why we should go forward with this. Would you like to tell me a little bit about Ideas with Ease?
Ideas with Ease was actually like something that was a need because of the fact that getting your identification card and your driver's license, it's so expensive, and it's like literally impossible to like get a hold of if you do not have somebody to vouch for you and vouch for your identity, especially if you don't have your social security number or maybe your birth certificate. Originally, while talking with fellow chapter members, it was difficult hearing about how they were struggling to find a job or maybe get into different housing because they couldn't access proper identification. After tons of research, we found that there was not a way to make it easier and more accessible to youth. We as a chapter then decided to push forward with the topic Ideas with Ease, and eventually we passed the law in which it makes it easier for youth to acquire their identification.
Wow, that's definitely a journey. You're right, before it was extremely difficult to actually get an identification card. The process for us getting the House Bill 1219 to actually pass was difficult in a similar manner. At the beginning of the advocacy cycle, we were tasked with revisiting old topics to see if we could expand upon them. So we decided, let's do legal rep again. It was incredibly motivating to have a topic that, has given us not necessarily problems, but difficulties in the past getting recognized. And not only that, but having so many people behind us actually wanting this to go through, it really just helped us kind of get through it. Going into getting this bill finally passed over, we acknowledged that, this bill had been worked on for about 15 years. Like, this was not something, we'll just put it on the back burner for now. This is something that countless people have tried to work on and just kept running into roadblocks with. But to finally be the chapter that got this passed, to bring it over the finish line, so to speak, was just, I can't quite describe it.
Congratulations. That's actually really cool.
Thank you.
I was talking to a professor within a college, and they told me a lot of really great things about how the foster system and the juvenile court system just kind of came to be. What we would call like a guardian ad litem today was actually somebody who would represent youth in the courts back then. And they would actually take in youth who didn't have like parents to represent them or be there with them, and they take in youth and they'd stay at their house. Like, people would take in kids that didn't have parents and teach them how to do things. And then they were like, oh, this is a great thing. This is working. We should implement a system that is broken. And it was created by a bunch of elderly white men who didn't experience what these youth are experiencing. And I guess that's why it's so important to have youth voice, because we started with a broken system. If youth voice was implemented in the beginning, the system would not be as broken as it is now.
That's a wonderful point. And a lot of people are so willing just to write off youth voice because, they're kids, what do they know? But to be directly impacted by a system, you yourself know what needs to be changed. So why wouldn't we take that from the youth, Which is why, like you said, youth voice is so important. So, for example, like I mentioned earlier, House Bill 1219 took about 15 years to pass. And the idea came from youth that were in the chapters, and they said, hey, this is something that needs to be fixed. And we tried, and we eventually got a study out of it, but that was just to prove what we already knew 15 years ago.
Yep, and that's exactly why youth need to be understood. Like, people need to sit back, listen, and learn from the youth.
Youth in foster care have more rights now than they did 20 years ago, and I feel that that's directly impacted by Mockingbird. One such, for example, is extended foster care, something that I have directly benefited from. It used to be when you turned 18, you were just kind of out onto the street, Like, sorry, have a nice life. But with this program in place, there was actually a safety net, like that you have a basic income that you can fall back on if you have trouble finding a job. I had access to various services, one such, independent living skills, an invaluable service, because they'll teach you things that, a parent should teach you, like how to get a job, interviews, resumes, all of that. Teach you how to get your driver's license, how to open a bank account, all these things that you should be taught that you might not be taught in foster care.
It's a good thing that independent living skills is actually available to youth after they turn 18 as well, specifically because of the fact that when you're not in foster care, for the most part, you do have your parents to fall back on. When you are in foster care and you turn 18 and then you age out of the system, you don't have that fallback. You don't have that support. And extended foster care kind of does that. Another great thing about extended foster care is that makes it to where I can qualify for the educational training voucher. And they actually just recently got a lot of funding. And so I am actually going to be graduating college with virtually no debt. And I went out of state. Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
With my bachelor's.
Wow, that's incredible.
And that kind of like also brings it back, because if Mockingbird did not complete the work that they did generations before me, my generation now would not be able to succeed.
Well, absolutely. Because, I mean, without Mockingbird, the extended foster care wouldn't be where it's at today. My first youth advocacy day, that was Yakima chapter's topic. And I got to speak to a lawmaker. I am so glad that I actually got to go and speak with them about this, because that little bit of advocacy right there is one of the main reasons I keep coming back. Because it actually changed something. And it doesn't, like, yes, it affected me, but it also affects countless people after me. It's just a nice feeling.
Exactly, like that's a great point. If we don't set our youth up for success within the future generations, all we're gonna see is failure. All these youth are going to see and know is failure, think that they can't make it in life. And what I mean by failure is it's not the young people who are failing. It is the system who is failing the young people. Systems change is so important, specifically because youth in foster care and or experiencing homelessness have a lot of barriers. If we don't change the system now, they're going to continue to have those barriers, and they're not going to be able to live successful, fulfilling, and healthy lifestyles. And that's why Mockingbird is so important, because if we're not advocating for that specific stuff within the system, it's not going to change. It's going to continue to be difficult. While you were blessed, many others aren't.
Exactly. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. That's why I do the work that I do. I keep coming back because of the fact I have seen what we do in action, and I know that what we're doing actually is changing things. I may not directly benefit from everything that we change, but I'm not doing this for me.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important for not only us to be doing this work, but the public to also like support our work, because that could be their grandbaby, that could be their cousin, that could be their brother or sister or just their auntie. That's family, and if we don't better the system and set our youth up for success, nobody will.
Wow, that was incredibly powerful. That gave me goosebumps. That's a wonderful point. And an example of that community support that I felt was, especially during the passing of 1219, we had so many people behind us. Like, it was like once we got our feet on the ground, there was no stopping us.
Exactly, like the community is so important, because you wouldn't have had that passed if the community wasn't there to support you.
If I could tell our supporters anything, all I'd really want to tell them is thank you for all the support that they've given us, because we can't do this alone. The support that we get is absolutely instrumental in the policies that we've put forth.
Honestly, youth deserve the chance to learn how to speak up for themselves. Youth deserve the chance to be able to be set up for success. The system doesn't need to be failing youth anymore.
Wonderful. I don't know what else to say to that, but that was great.